This challenging time is your springboard. It's your opportunity to let go. So many people have been reaching out to me talking about feeling stressed, feeling anxious, something has happened in their lives, or sometimes they're not even sure why they're going through this period of feeling stressed or anxious. So I wanted to share with you my story recently. So for those of you who have been following me for a while, you'll know that I have had a transformation over the last 5 years or so following my mum's passing in 2016. And I'd really got to the point where over the last 12 months or so, I was just feeling amazing most of the time, really on a high vibration, feeling very aligned, very peaceful, very calm, everything going wonderfully, everything falling into place. And then in June this year, I had the wonderful opportunity to go to Queensland and speak to the Lincoln Institute, who help vets improve the profits in their businesses and holistically as well. And I had a wonderful conversation with that group. I was in a beautiful hotel in the Gold Coast, and everything about that weekend was absolutely magnificent. And I was on a complete high, feeling so grateful for my life and for my experience and the work that I had a chance to do with the vets. And I knew that I was coming back to take my dad in for some elective surgery, day surgery. So I came back and I had that planned out. I did have a few calls booked in around the day of his day surgery. I thought I would take him and then, go and sit in my car and make some calls. I had a Calmness Code challenge coming up the following week, so I had a bit of work to do around that. So I took Daddy in and took him in and left him there for the surgery, and then came back when he was meant to be ready to be discharged, and was in and out of sitting with him and sitting in the car and talking to people on the phone. He became disoriented after the day surgery, and we talked about him not having an anaesthetic because he gets disoriented, but they've ended up having to use a little bit of anaesthetic, and so he was quite confused. So he ended up having to stay overnight, and I was back again the next day. And eventually he was discharged, and I took him back to the nursing home. So I set him up to have his lunch, and I went home, and I had more calls to do. And I was home for about an hour before I got the call to say that he'd had a fall and he was in the ambulance on his way to hospital. So I went up to the hospital and I was with him in and out of hospital. He was there for 2 weeks and I kept going up to see him. And on the day that he fell, on the 18th of June, I became anxious. I stopped sleeping, and intellectually, I knew everything that I teach, everything that I've learned through my own transformation. I knew that he is going to be okay no matter what happens, whether he gets sick, whether something goes wrong with his health, whether he passes away. He is eternal, and at a soul level, he is going to transition in perfect ways. Everything is working out for him. He had been saying for a while leading up to this that he was getting bored with life and he didn't really want to be here anymore. And I knew intellectually that everything was okay. And I felt like there was a disconnect between these calming, soothing, conscious thoughts that I was having about everything that I know and everything that I understand and everything that I teach, and my stomach that was just in a knot and churning and just being unable to sleep. And even with my inability to sleep, I was able to lie there and say, this is okay. I wasn't stressing about not sleeping, and I was still having lots of energy during the day to go up and be with my dad, to duck out and make work phone calls and to balance all of those things. So on the outside, it really appeared everything was going well, but there was this constant knot in my stomach and this inability to sleep. And what was happening, I realize now, is that there was a disconnect between what I was able to think consciously and what I was aware of, what I was deliberately thinking, and the thoughts that were still going on that I wasn't so aware of. And so I really think that this is what can be happening when we're stressed and when we're anxious. When we can become very aware of our thoughts, we can think positive things, and we can reason with ourselves and say everything's going to be okay. But it is the training that we've had, the conditioning that we've had, that will take us to the default fear-based thinking. And as I reflect on it now, as I really am very honest with myself and I look back at that so that I can teach others from my experience, I think about what was really going on, and the underlying thinking was that I felt responsible. I felt like I had to control things. When I was growing up, my nana became very unwell and my mum was a nurse, and so our nana came to live with us and my mum nursed her. She lived for another 12 months after she'd been told that she had weeks to live, and she lived with us in that time, and my mum took care of her. And after my nana died, my mum really regretted a lot of things, and she worried about whether she did everything she could do. And she really wanted to control the situation. She wanted to keep her mum alive, and she wanted to do everything right. And she felt even more pressure being a nurse and having to have all the answers and to make sure that she made all the right medical decisions and gave her the best care. And as I reflect on what happened when I went through this period of anxiety, I was doing the same thing. I was taking on a responsibility and trying to control something that I had no control over. So intellectually, I had no control over that, and I was telling myself that, but the anxiety was caused by me trying to control something that I couldn't control. I wanted everything to be just right. Whether he was going to stay alive or not, I wanted everything to be just right. And Dad passed in a beautiful way. He was peaceful. He said to his favourite carer the night before he passed, "Look after my plants for me. I won't be here tomorrow." And it was perfect. You know, he passed the way that he wanted to pass. And still, I wasn't sleeping. Then it was COVID. Then my sister was unsure whether she was going to be able to cross the border to come to the funeral. Then we had a lockdown and the funeral was cancelled. The numbers kept changing, you know, who could come to the funeral and who couldn't come to the funeral. So again, I was taking on this responsibility. I was trying to keep everybody happy. I wanted everybody who wanted to be at the funeral to be at the funeral. When we did have the funeral with limited numbers, we ended up live streaming the funeral so that the people that couldn't come and couldn't cross the borders could watch the funeral via live stream. Thankfully, my sister was there in person, and the internet broke down at the funeral home, and there were people waiting to watch it who couldn't watch it. So again, there were all of these things that intellectually I was like, that's okay, there's nothing I can do about that. But the knot was there, the anxiety was there, and the lack of sleep was there. And so eventually I reached out to somebody, the same lady who I saw after my mum died 5.5 years ago. And I went to see her, and I realised that there was so much power in going to talk to somebody who you don't know. Somebody who is not your friend, not your family, somebody who is not empathizing with you or sympathizing with you and feeling your grief with you. There's almost this sense of responsibility to the person who's caring about you and asking you if you're okay, to give them what they're asking for and share with them how you're feeling and how distressed you are, and just really compounding that feeling that there is a problem and staying on that vibration of the problem rather than being able to rise to and reach that level of the solution, which is a different vibration to the problem. And when I went to this person who doesn't know me, she hasn't seen me since I saw her once after Mum died, and I just told her the truth. I told her the truth, knowing that there was no expectation from her and there was no expectation of me. I didn't need to make her feel okay about what I was saying. I just told the truth, and I cried and I let it go. And I began to sleep again. I began to sleep again, and the anxiety was gone, and I was able to connect what I'm thinking at an intellectual level to the way I'm actually behaving, which is related to what's going on at that subconscious level, that trained limiting belief practice level. And I reflect and realize that my anxiety was caused by trying to control things that I can't control. and by making sure that everybody else felt okay, looking after everybody else's feelings, which again is something that I can't control. So if you are feeling anxious or worried or going through a stressful time, just check in and see whether you're trying to control something that you can't control, and allow yourself to take a break from focusing on the problem so that you can allow yourself to rise to that vibration of the solution. And maybe talking to somebody who you don't know, so you have the opportunity to just say what you need to say and let it go. Feel the emotion. I really allowed myself to cry in that appointment, and I was able to release that pressure, I guess, and that sense of responsibility. So I would love you to share this with someone who you think might be going through a challenging time, or if it's you that's going through a challenging time and you would like to connect, then please reach out to me.